How are we doing, guys? Broken Machine here. Hope you're all doing well out there. DICE invited me to an early look at their new map Haven, arriving in Battlefield 2042 Season 7 Turning Point, and I'll be sitting down with Shashank Ochil from the level design team to discuss and look through all the details this map has to offer. So sit back, relax, and turn up that quality to 4K, as this map is absolutely beautiful.
We have to destroy their objectives and control the sectors.
There is obvious influences here from various fan favourite maps. Arica Harbour from Bad Company 2, Striker Karkin from Battlefield 3, and one of my personal favourites, A Little Amiens from Battlefield 1. I definitely believe you guys are going to enjoy playing this. There is an incredible amount of detail and variety here. A downed condor still in flames, a marketplace that appears still very much lived in, a cheeseburger someone left in a hurry. What exactly have we stumbled upon here? Can you give us a taste of the backstory?
So we finished season 6, which was a fully interior CQC tight space, right? With no vehicles. And then clearly, okay, we said, okay, after this map, what do we do next? And one thing we knew is we do want to make small maps, but what we don't want to do is make it just purely CQC because it's a battlefield game and it's the interaction between infantry and vehicles. So that was a starting point where, okay, we still want to make an urban map, but it needs to basically cater for all the kind of players, right? You have a bit of CQC, you have infantry, you have vehicles, you have flying stuff. So that was a crux of the thing where urban warfare, and we even have a tagline for that. It's like door-to-door combat. And the cat and mouse between you have the vehicles and you have the infantry, the interplay between those two. How does that work? And then we looked at, okay, what do we have? For me, it was most like Arica Harbour. Okay, we know how that works. It's a good scale. It works with infantry, it works with tanks, it works with a bit of air. And that's how it started. And then it goes into, okay, what's the backstory? The backstory basically is what is, like, when everything goes bad in the world, what is the one thing that everybody still needs? It's water, right? And that became the cornerstone for the whole map where what can we do with water as a narrative which drives the whole level where what are you fighting over? You're fighting over a resource, and in this case, it's going to be the water. So it's small maps, infantry, vehicle, find a good narrative hook, which is the reason for the fighting, which is the water. And because usually the resource tends to be land, right? They're trying to take over some sort of military base or some sort of capital. We're like, okay, what we take away all that stuff and try something different, which is we've never done this before. We're fighting for a natural resource before.
That struggle over a natural resource is certainly felt throughout the map. Haven's beautiful warm tones are quite the opposite, though, of the previous season's map, Redacted. Can you give us an insight into the design choices behind these striking contrasts here?
I mean, definitely, right? We worked for so long on the previous map in Redacted. I mean, it's colorful in its own way, but you have a lot of reds, you have a lot of blues, but it was a very cold level, if you think of it on a color palette. And it was the theme was horror, right? And that's what happened with the narrative as well, where you have these people, the robots, everything is happening, a lot of blood everywhere. And then we're like, okay, can we get away from that and make something just more warm? Has a bit more, what do you call it? Not positive, but a bit more, there is hope. Similar to how you had with the Season 5 one, which was, so basically if you think of, like I said, Season 6 was quite dark, Season 5 was had a positive, there was hope in that. Like, it was cold, but spring is coming. And then we went to the next one, which was dark, foreboding, a bit of horror elements to it. And then we wanted to go back to hope where, okay, can we have a bit more bright palette? That's why it's the desert. But if you look at the map, there's a lot of like colorful markets, people have lived there, you can see kids playing around. So it was more about going to sort of more warm, more hopeful approach. Same thing with the water. Water is something that everybody needs. So it's more hopeful than the previous map. Be a bit more creative, have a bit more fun. Doesn't need to be that serious. I mean, of course, it's war, so it's serious, but I would say there's much more humanity in this map than the previous one. And you can see that people have lived over here before, and you can see how people lived, what they were doing. There's a marketplace. That's a place where kids were playing as well. So a lot of human elements in this map.
Definitely does feel lived in. While wandering around, I was having way too much fun shooting pots of paint left behind, which does lead to my next question. More destruction is something that fans have been asking for quite some time. What can you tell us about any destruction improvements for this map?
I mean, that was a big pillar for this map because, again, coming from the previous one where it was interiors and not much destruction, what we knew was like, okay, it was all CQC with not much destruction. We could have flipped it around where it has to be mid-range combat with a lot of destruction. And that was a big pillar as well where let's make sure we have assets and we use assets and locations which cater for destruction. So if you play the map, you can see most of the houses we built can be destroyed and gives you much more opportunities where imagine as an infantry player, you see a tank, you run into something. And as a tank player, you know you can destroy that building and flush out the infantry from those spaces. So that's how it works where there's an interplay between vehicles and infantry, and that works with destruction hand in hand. Most of the buildings in the level are going to be destructible, but if you keep in mind, not everything can be destroyed to maintain line of sight. Right? So you can't be in a place where the whole map has been leveled, and then you have crazy line of sight. And snipers just loot the whole map. That's the reason why we still have to keep some non-destructible elements to maintain line of sights, covers, etc.
Such intentional design choices are certainly felt while navigating around the map. What I particularly loved is that each area of Haven is its own distinct zone. They are very much self-contained in a way, yet still very much connected to the surrounding areas and the map as a whole. As infantry dealt with armor in the town center, battles were fought separately elsewhere, in and around the down condor, especially at the crash site, and as soon as other objectives were secured and the battle progressed, factions came to clash together through the various connecting paths. There is huge potential here for many tug-of-war moments, so when players drop in themselves, what type of flow can they expect across the map?
The layout caters to, I would say, it's kind of a circular map, the central core, because we expect the center map, the central flag, to be the most busiest place, the sea flag, which is the market. But we also want, like I said, the tanks needs to be able to move around, and we expect tanks to go around, like from say A, B, D, and E. But what we expect is that everything converges through C. As an example, so you go from A to C to E, or you can go from, say, you went from A to B, and then you want to go to D. I'm imagining you would go via C, right? So while you can play around the peripherals, we expect the players to go through the center of the map to go to the other spaces. That's why we have the central core of the map, where everybody expected to meet and fight over. And then, as a player, if you want to say like, hey, the center is too busy, I want to get away from it. Like you said, you can always go to the condor or the pumps, which is a bit more quieter. It's on the peripheral, but you can always get to the center quite fast. That's something we worked a lot for this one is like distances where can you be outside and how fast can you get to the center if you want to, and how fast can you get away from it as well. If you look at the HQs will go from the HQ to HQ will go through three flags, right? The central three flags. And then you have the top and bottom as well to get away from it. So I think it has a nice flow where as a tank players, you can kind of choose where you want to be. Infantry can get away from it, also then can come back if they want to. And one more thing that I just realized, sorry, I'm just ranting now, but I've seen a lot of comments on Reddit saying that we are making two linear maps. Maps are getting too linear, maps are getting too linear. So for us, this was more about, okay, how do we make a non-linear, more square, round map that players seem to want? I mean, for me personally, it was mostly Eureka Harbor. That was for me the biggest point of reference because the buildings are the similar ones, I would say, and similar theme and kind of the same sizes and the same ranges. But I would say from that was the only touch point I would say. Everything else I would say is quite dissimilar, at least in my opinion. It's very different, but the thing is it feels similar, but it plays very differently. But it still gives you have that notion of this could be next to Eureka Harbor in a way where, because the scales are quite similar, and you have that interplay between infantry and tanks, and you have the interiors, but you can always destroy the interiors and flush people out. So I think it's quite similar where you feel it's a known theme, but it plays very differently than everything else.
Eureka Harbor's influence can certainly be felt throughout the map, but the details and layouts throughout keep it fresh. Weaving through the streets flying behind the town centre felt more like Battlefield 1, yet looking down into the marketplace, it's Striker Karkin from Battlefield 3. Do you want to go into details behind such influences and how this map came to be?
I mean, like I said earlier, where we started off with this concept of we want to have urban warfare. And then we looked back and say, the same way how we looked at the season 5 map, right? And we said, can we make Zabod? And what would Zabod look if we made it today? And the same thing for us with this one, with season 7 is, what would Eureka look like if we made it today? And we took inspiration from that, and we took distances and scales from that, and the core fundamental gameplay, but made a twist on it. And something we learned from the previous one was, as soon as we tell people Zabod, people imagine is a remake. No, it's not a remake of Zabo. It was a take. And similar for this one is like, it's not Eureka Harbor, but Eureka starts as a base for us. And what can we learn from it and take all the good things from that and make a different map based on that.
Take. I love that. Locations have been revisited in the series before. How was it to return to the Atacama Desert? Were there any particular unique challenges that had to be overcome when designing this map? And what was the motivation for the team to return to the regions of Atacama and Valparaiso?
Initially, we said it's a small map, which means we can do everything we want. But the issue is something we learned very fast is just because you make a small map doesn't mean you have infinite budget. The issue is because it's a smaller map, everything gets dense very fast, especially if we want to have a lot of destruction. And then you have to figure out like, okay, we want to have a lot of things, we want to have a lot of destruction, but also needs to be performant. And then the whole thing of line of sight comes into play where, okay, if you want to have all these things to make sure not everything can be seen from every location. That's why you have the height differences across the whole map where the water section is quite low, then the center is quite high, and then you have the topmost flags, and they're all tiered. And it's tiered not just for visual thing, it's purely for performance. So performance was the biggest challenge for us. And also at the same time, making sure, like I said, this map looks quite different from any other map in terms of the colors or the details we have put into it in terms of how it feels lived in. So that is something we also got feedback from the original vanilla maps. When it came out, people felt that these maps don't look like, it doesn't feel like people live in these locations. That is something we want to bring back, at least for this one, where we had to make sure that it felt like people were here, the war has happened, and then they have left. And to get all that in and be performant was a big challenge for us.
I'm sure there's hidden secrets scattered throughout this map. I definitely have some suspicions of my own. Can you talk about any potential Easter egg hunts here?
Not really, not yet. I will let you know as soon as we know something.
Exciting, cannot wait to hear more. There is a very defined set of vehicles here with intentional choices for the interplay between the infantry and vehicles. How did you come to this selection?
I mean, it's quite simple. It's basically what could fit on the space and would make sense. Because initially we're like, can we put jets? And we actually tried jets in the map. And we soon realized it was way too small where the turning radius of the jets just wouldn't make sense. But we knew that it needs to be a combination of infantry and vehicles. And the question was, what vehicles makes the most sense in the space that we have? That's how the selection was made, purely based on the scale of the map.